In this episode, we are looking at what should happen when a device reaches the end of its useful life and needs to leave service safely. For a beginner, this topic matters because retirement is not just about unplugging a computer and putting it in a closet or throwing old equipment in a bin. A retired laptop, phone, printer, or storage drive may still contain files, saved logins, cached email, business records, customer data, or other information that should never be left behind for the next person to find. That means disposal is a security issue, not just a cleanup task. It is also an operational responsibility because organizations need to know what left service, where it went, how it was handled, and whether the process followed the right steps instead of relying on guesswork. Before we continue, a quick note. This audio course is part of our companion study series. The first book is a detailed study guide that explains the exam and helps you prepare for it with confidence. The second is a Kindle-only ebook with 1,000 flashcards you can use on your mobile device or Kindle for quick review. You can find both at Cyber.Me in the Bare Metal Study Guide series. A lot of people think the risk ends when a device is powered off for the last time, but that is not how it works. Data does not disappear just because a machine is old, broken, or no longer assigned to a user. If the storage is still there, the information may still be there too, even if the screen is cracked, the battery is dead, or the operating system no longer loads properly. For beginners, this is one of the most important ideas in the whole topic. The danger of a retired device is often quiet, not visible. Nobody sees an alarm on the screen that says there is still sensitive data inside, but the risk remains until the device or the storage has been handled correctly. That is why device retirement must be treated with the same care as device setup. The machine may be leaving service, but the responsibility for its data is not gone yet. It also helps to understand what counts as a retired device or retired media. This includes obvious things like desktop computers, laptops, tablets, phones, and external drives, but it can also include less obvious items such as printers, multifunction devices, old backup drives, removable storage, and other equipment that stores data in some form. Beginners sometimes assume only the main computer matters, but many other devices can keep copies of documents, scans, account details, job records, or configuration information. A printer used in an office may have handled payroll forms, contracts, or patient records. A phone may still have business email and save cloud access. An old backup drive may hold years of files that nobody remembers until the wrong person finds them. Secure retirement starts with remembering that data lives in more places than people first expect, and every one of those places needs to be handled on purpose. One common mistake is assuming that deleting files or doing a quick reset means the device is ready to leave the organization safely. For beginners, this is where the topic often becomes clearer. Deleting is not the same as fully cleaning a device for retirement. A file that looks gone to the user may still leave recoverable data behind, and a basic reset may not be enough for the level of protection the organization actually needs. That is why retired devices are usually handled through stronger methods such as wiping, sanitizing, or destroying storage depending on the situation. The important lesson is simple. Normal user cleanup is not retirement cleanup. A person clearing off their desktop to feel organized is doing something very different from an organization preparing a device to be reassigned, recycled, sold, returned, or destroyed. The retirement process has to match the risk, not just the user's idea of what feels empty. Wiping is a good place to start because it is one of the most common ways to prepare storage for reuse when the device is still working and the organization wants to keep using it in some form. Wiping is meant to remove the old data in a stronger and more deliberate way than ordinary deletion. For a beginner, the key point is that wiping is about preparing the storage so the previous user's information is no longer sitting there waiting to be recovered by the next user. This matters when laptops are reassigned, desktops are repurposed, or storage is moved into another approved device. Wiping is not just about saving space. It is about breaking the connection between the old data and the next stage of the device's life. If a device is going back into service, the technician needs confidence that the old user's files, sessions, and access traces are not still present underneath the fresh setup. Sanitization is the broader idea behind safe data removal, and beginners should understand it as the process of making the stored information no longer usable to unauthorized people. Wiping is one way to support sanitization, but the larger point is that the organization needs a method that fits the kind of media, the sensitivity of the data, and the next destination of the device. In plain language, sanitization means the device is being prepared so the old information is not coming along for the ride. If the device is being reused internally, there still needs to be confidence that one user is not inheriting another user's data. If the device is leaving organizational control entirely, the need for strong sanitization becomes even more important because there is less control over who may handle the device later. A beginner does not need every deep technical detail to understand this. The practical lesson is that safe retirement requires stronger data removal than ordinary cleanup. Not every device should be wiped and reused. Sometimes destruction is the better answer, especially when the storage is damaged, the device no longer works reliably, the cost of reuse is not worth it, or the information was sensitive enough that the organization does not want the media kept in circulation at all. Destruction means the storage is physically damaged or broken down, so the data cannot be reasonably recovered and the media cannot return to use. For a beginner, the easiest way to understand the difference is this. Wiping is often for reuse. Destruction is for final disposal when reuse is no longer the goal or no longer feels safe enough. This can apply to old drives, damaged phones, failed storage devices, and other media that should not remain intact. The technician needs to think about what the organization wants next. If the answer is continued use, wiping may make sense. If the answer is final end of life, destruction may be the safer path. Destruction is especially important when a device cannot be trusted to wipe cleanly or cannot even be operated well enough to support a normal sanitization process. A dead laptop with a bad motherboard may still have a perfectly readable storage device inside. A phone with a ruined screen may still hold messages, photos, and app data. An old drive that makes strange sounds may fail tomorrow, but today it may still contain everything it held yesterday. Beginners should understand that broken does not mean empty. In fact, broken devices can be some of the most dangerous to handle carelessly because people assume they are useless and stop treating them like data containers. That is why a retirement process needs clear rules for failed media. If the storage cannot be sanitized with confidence, then destruction is often the right answer. The purpose is not to be dramatic. The purpose is to remove uncertainty before the device leaves controlled hands. Recycling is the next piece, and this is where disposal becomes an operational responsibility as well as a security issue. Old equipment should not simply be tossed in the regular trash when a better path exists, especially because electronics can contain materials that should be handled through proper recycling channels. For a beginner, this means device retirement is not just about getting rid of clutter. It is about choosing an approved path for the physical hardware after the data risk has been addressed. A safe process usually follows a simple logic. First, protect the information, then handle the hardware responsibly. If the organization recycles devices through a trusted provider or approved internal process, that reduces both environmental waste and security risk. The mistake is thinking recycling alone solves the problem. Recycling is for the hardware. Sanitization or destruction is for the data. Both matter, but they solve different parts of the retirement process. Another important part of doing this right is controlling the device between the moment it is retired and the moment it is finally wiped, destroyed, or sent to the next approved destination. This is often called chain of custody in broader security work, but the beginner-level lesson is simple. Retired devices should not sit around loose in open boxes, desk drawers, hall closets, or the trunks of personal cars while people figure out what to do later. The device still contains risk during that waiting period. A technician should treat retired equipment as something that needs controlled handling, not casual storage. If the media is still intact, then the data may still be intact too. That means old devices should be collected, stored, and moved in a way that reduces the chance of loss, theft, or mix-ups. A poor handoff can undo an otherwise good retirement plan because the device may disappear before the secure disposal step ever happens. Documentation is where the operational side becomes very clear. If an organization retires a device, it should be able to answer simple questions later without guessing. What was the device? Who used it? When was it retired? What happened to its storage? Who handled the process? And where did the hardware go afterward? Beginners sometimes see documentation as boring paperwork added after the real work, but in this case, it is part of the real work. Without records, the organization may not know whether a laptop was wiped or only powered off, whether an old drive was destroyed or is still sitting on a shelf, or whether a printer with stored scans was actually removed from service at all. Good retirement documentation creates proof, accountability, and clarity. It also helps when audits, disputes, or future questions come up, because the organization can show what happened instead of depending on somebody's memory months later. A useful retirement record usually includes basic asset details, the date the device left service, the method used to sanitize or destroy the media, and the final disposition of the hardware. It may also include approvals, serial numbers, technician names, and notes about whether the device was recycled, reassigned, donated through an approved program, or physically destroyed. A beginner does not need to memorize a perfect form, but it helps to understand why each detail matters. If a device later appears missing, the organization can trace where it was supposed to go. If there is a question about whether data was removed, the record shows what method was used. If the device was reassigned, the next owner can be given a system that has a clear retirement and reissue history instead of a confusing past. Documentation turns disposal from an informal habit into a managed process, and managed processes are much easier to trust. This topic also matters because retired devices are often handled during busy periods when people are focused on the new equipment, not the old equipment. A user gets a replacement laptop, everyone is happy the new one is ready, and the old one is pushed to the side for later. That later moment is where many organizations create avoidable problems. Devices pile up. Nobody is sure which ones were wiped. One printer gets stored in a back room for months. A box of old drives changes hands 3 times. A phone that should have been processed properly is handed to someone as a spare without clear records. For beginners, this shows why disposal is an operational responsibility. The work is not finished when the new device is issued. The old device must be retired in a controlled way, or the organization ends up with data risk, missing assets, and confusion that grows over time instead of shrinking. There are also common mistakes that technicians should learn to avoid early. One is assuming a factory reset always means the device is fully ready to leave control. Another is forgetting that printers, phones, and external media may hold sensitive data too. A third is storing retired devices in unsecured places while waiting for someone else to handle them later. Another frequent mistake is skipping documentation because the team is busy and plans to fill it in afterward. These are not small issues. A single misstep can leave customer files on an old drive, business email on a phone sent to recycling, or an untracked laptop missing from the asset list entirely. The retirement process matters because devices at end of life still require professional handling. Just because a machine is no longer useful to the current user does not mean it is no longer capable of causing harm. As we close, the main lesson is that retiring devices the right way means treating the end of a device's life as a real security and operations process, not as an afterthought. Old computers, phones, printers, drives, and other media may still contain valuable information long after they stop being useful for daily work. Wiping and sanitization help prepare devices for safe reuse. Destruction helps end the life of media that should not stay in circulation. Recycling handles the physical hardware responsibly after the data risk has been addressed, and documentation proves what happened from start to finish. For a beginner, that is the big picture to remember. Disposal is not just throwing something away. It is protecting the information, handling the hardware responsibly, and keeping clear records so the organization knows the retired device was managed correctly. When those steps are done well, old equipment leaves service without taking security, accountability, or trust with it.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit DailyCyber.News.